Edge retention. How long does it last? Well, today we have some competing knives to see what knife will last the longest. Over here on the left we have a knife made by me. It's a 80CR V2 Hunter. It's tempered a little bit softer to make it a little bit easier to resharpen. It's about 58 Rockwells, and it's a knife built for hunters. We also have an 80CR V2 knife that is at 63 Rockwells, so it's a lot harder and it should hold an edge much longer. Then we have my personal Bowie knife that I made from cpm154cm. We have another hunting knife made from W2 tool steel at about 63 Rockwells. My knife here is about 61 Rockwells. Then we have the Becker BK2, pretty common knife. Then we have the KABAR. I can't remember the exact name of this knife, but everybody just usually calls it the KABAR. When you hear that, that's a knife that they're talking about. We have the Ontario Spec 10, Spec Plus. Yeah, it says Spec 10 on it. It's based after the Marine Raider Bowie from, I think, the Vietnam War, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong about that. Feel free to correct me if you want to in the comments down below. And here we have the classic Buck 119. Every knife here I've used. The newest one though is the Buck 119, because I bought it specifically just for testing against my knives, because it's a popular knife and I want to show what my knives can do versus something that's as common and high quality as that. So we're going to go ahead and start the rope cutting, and if the quality dips off, I'm going to apologize right now. Hopefully my GoPro doesn't die before then, but we'll go ahead and get started.
Rather than leave you here in silence during this portion of the video, I thought I'd tell you a story of my life. When I was 22 years old, I worked on a cattle ranch in southeast Idaho. It was one of my favorite jobs I've ever had. I enjoyed getting up every day, tending a herd of buffalo, cattle, feeding horses, and getting on the mountain to fix barbed wire. Hard work, but I love being outside and I love the fresh air. On a late fall morning, I got a phone call from my boss. His words were, "Mark, are you feeling tough?" And I said, "Maybe." Well, the task that was going to be laid out in front of me was to fix a busted valve that was underwater. Now, in southeast Idaho, it gets pretty cold in the wintertime. And on this day, it was around 10 degrees or so. There was already snow on the ground. I arrived at the spot where the valve had broken and it had cut off water to several houses. And I jumped down into the hole with a pair of hip waders on, because the thought was that they would keep me warm or dry. But as soon as we pulled the old valve out, the hole filled up with water immediately. Over the next 58 minutes, I had to figure out how to replace the valve because the pressure from the water was too high. And eventually, we did get it replaced by pressing a pipe down on top of the new valve and twisting it into place. But over that 58 minutes, I was exposed to extreme colds, and it was the coldest I had ever felt.
Sorry about the drop in quality. My GoPro battery just died. So, I've gone through 10 cuts with each knife, except for these 3 knives. To make these knives cut, the grinds would have to change. These knives are just made for different purposes, so they're not real narrow at the edge. So to cut the rope with them would have been way more work than I'm willing to put into right now, and would kind of defeat the purpose of them competing in this test. They are all shaving sharp. They will all shave, but because of the grinds, it just was too much work to try to go through the rope. So they're all 3 of these are out. The buck knife went through 10 times, and its edge in slicing paper, it'll go. All right, so you see, it will go. It's just not. There we go. So if I guide it, it will go. Now, that's better than what it did with the factory edge. With the factory edge, it went 7 times, and it wouldn't quite cut that cleanly. So it still catches a little bit, so it's not perfect. It doesn't pull off any hairs. I got dead skin that it'll take off, but it is not able to shave still. I think I did manage to get 1 hair off. So after 10 times, this knife no longer shaves. This is my 80 CRV2 Hunter. That's it's a little softer. So it can be resharpened easier. It's at about 58 Rockwells. And it's still in pretty good shape after 10 cuts. So that's what that is. Let's see if it takes hair. I see a couple hairs, but not quite extremely razor sharp. Okay, next we will move on to the chef's knife, and most of the cutting happened down in here, so pretty sharp still. Okay, that's 10 cuts. Let's see here. And it actually will remove some hair. Yeah, that'll shave. That'll still shave after 10 times through the rope. Next we have my W2 tool steel hunting knife. Let's see where it's at. It's pretty sharp too. Right, and my Bowie knife. Still pretty sharp. Okay, I didn't check the W2 for shaving. Ooh. That actually removes hair better than the chef's knife did. Still shaving sharp. Now for the Bowie knife, where can I go with hair? Could shave my leg, but that's a little too white to catch on camera. Alright, it's taking hairs. It's not quite. Well, that's better. That's shaving still. It doesn't feel like it's shaving quite as good as the W2 or the 80 CRV2. It is at 61 Rockwells, and the other two are at 63 Rockwells. And just to double check, make sure that the buck. Let me just try. It is. Let's try the tip. Alright, so tip is still shaving sharp, but this is where the bulk of the cutting took place. So after 10 cuts, see here, if I go really slow, the buck knife will cut paper. That was a really good one. Okay, so it will still cut paper if it's guided a little bit. But just not quite on par with, let's see here, this is probably the one that, yeah, it's a bit sharper. So the buck knife is a very high quality knife. A lot of people like it, and it's stainless. Only one of my knives here is stainless, and that's my Bowie knife, made from cpm154cm. I am surprised though, because with the factory edge, this test only went to about 6 1/3 times through the rope, and then at that point it was just miserable to try to cut the rope. It didn't even cut the paper as well. So I don't know, maybe I just bought one that didn't have the best grind from the factory, because it would still shave. It was just I think that it was probably at a slightly steeper angle, and when angles get really steep on the edge of a knife, they're a little easier to, they don't last as long because they're not as durable, and they tend to just change shape when they're too steep. There's a happy medium between a bevel or an edge that's really wide and really thin, where you get durability and sharpness. This knife did better with my edge. I was actually impressed. I did not think it would last that long, but it made it through 10 times. I'm pretty sure that it would go through a couple more times. It's not shaving sharp where it was used the most on the rope, and so that's the result that you have there. It will go through the paper with some guiding, so it still is at a functional level of sharpness, in my opinion. However, I am proud to say that the knives that I have made are all still shaving sharp after 10 times. And maybe I'll just go ahead and keep cutting and see how far they can go and still shave. Shaving usually disappears pretty quick with activities like this, and I'm actually really excited that all of my knives are still shaving. So there you go, there's the results. I don't have a first place, but if I was to guess a first place between my knives, I would think it's going to be the W2 in the end. The cpm154cm, it's really great, and it is stainless, where these are all carbon, but it doesn't feel like it's quite as sharp as these. Now, I might do a video later on with these blades where I go ahead and I do all that extra hard work of trying to slice the rope with them, but my hands are just a little too tired to commit to that. These are all knives that are built on the principle of durability above all else, and they're mass produced, so there's not as much attention to detail. They're really aiming for durability and heavy use, and they're really great knives. They're incredibly hard to break. Their edges last a decent amount of time, but their grinds are not intended for uses of hunting, really. And so without changing the actual shape of these blades, they're not gonna do the rope cutting test the way I want it. This light's a little bright. Maybe it'll make me look more holy or something. So I have reached the end of my patience in rope cutting. I went ahead and pushed the knives that passed round 10 until, well, I pushed them as far as I felt like. So the 80 CRV2 knife that's at 63 Rockwells it went through the 1-inch rope 19 times before it stopped shaving where I was cutting. It still cleanly slices paper, and so it's still very sharp. I might change my angle here a little bit so we're not getting so much sunlight. That better? Maybe that's better. So it did pretty well. 19 times, still shaving, and it still slices paper. It could probably go a lot farther and still slice paper, but I don't know how many more times that's going to be through that rope, and my hand is just dead. My hand's dead. All right. Then we have the W2 tool steel. I thought it would do the best, and it actually did really, really well. It went through the rope 30 times, and it is still shaving sharp. I don't really have any hair available, and I'm starting to hurt my moles. So I can't really demonstrate the shaving capability on my arm, but it's still just super sharp. And so 30 times shaving, and so I don't know how much longer it would go, and it would clean me sliced paper. Let's see here. The 80 CRV2 Hunter that's at a lower Rockwell, it will not last as long as the 80 CRV2 Chef knife that is at 63 Rockwells. So I'm not even going to worry about continuously pushing it, because it'll lose its edge eventually and it'll stop going. But I mean, this is after the 10 times and it's still slicing pretty cleanly. The Bowie knife, I started doing the Bowie knife. I went one time and my hands just are pretty chewed up at this point, so it will go at some point. Later on, I will add that result. I don't know if you can see here, I wrote it in pencil on the wall, so it might be kind of small. The buck knife, it did not shave after 10 times, and I don't know when it stopped. Maybe it stopped shaving at 3, 4, or 5. Who even knows? It could have, maybe it was still shaving on 9. All I know is at 10, it did stop. And it does slice paper. So if you go kind of slow, it will still slice. It catches a little bit, but so this knife performed that well. And this knife is the same price, and it performed much better. This is one of the knives that I'm selling for $60, and it outperformed the buck. Now, my W tool steel knives are gonna be $65, and I will do sales occasionally on them, and their edges held very, very long. This W2 steel at this hardness lasted a long time, and it is fairly durable. I have videos where I use it and I drop it on steel and it doesn't break, so it's a pretty dang good knife for the price. You won't find any online that are properly heat treated that'll be even close in price. And I am going to test this Bowie knife out, see how long its edge holds. It is the only stainless steel that I work with at the moment. If you want a knife made of this, you'd have to wait for me to order the steel. So, the buck knife, it is a classic knife. It is a budget-friendly knife. And it's something that you can get and you'll have a warranty that'll protect you if you break the knife in knife-related activities, they'll replace it. So, it's got that going for it. So, I am going to later on do more with this knife, just to have its results established, and as time goes on, I'll do other knives as well. So, that's all the video there. That's going to be pretty long video. And so, there's the results of the edge retention testing so far.